Welcome to Unveiling Beauty, the video podcast that focuses on your beauty and self-care. I'm your host, Nick Stenson. As a beauty expert, I love inspiring beauty in all. And alongside me today is my co-host, Anna Manukian. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good.
And joining us today is curl specialist, industry activist, and Texture versus Race founder, Keya Neal. So happy to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick.
Yes.
I am so excited about today in this conversation. So hello to everyone.
Yes, I'm excited about this conversation too because, it's really, you're really an activist in the space. And I want to dive deeper into what does that mean, right? So talk to me about your mission behind Texture versus Race.
I like when people say, advocate and activist. And what it really means for me is that, I promote conversation around racial diversity, inclusion. I speak truth to power.
Oh, I like that.
I think I believe my space and my purpose has been to be the person that speaks the truth, that encourages people to really see what's happening, and to really ponder what do they need to do to now change the space that we see ourselves in the beauty industry. So Texture versus Race is a space for anyone from every corner of the industry, and we amplify, we fight for, we advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion on all spectrums.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's interesting that it's actually sad that it's taken us so long to have this conversation, right, as a society. And it's so important. How do you feel that this conversation is changing the landscape of the industry?
I believe we have not had the conversation for so long, and people have wanted to have it. I think everyone was kind of holding their breath. And when we finally just spoke up and said, okay, can we just sit down and talk about this?
Right.
Can we just call a thing a thing? Can we just say what it really is? I think people were sort of relieved. And that was a shock to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought, okay, I'm going to get out here and I'm going to speak my truth, which was really hard at the time during, the racial uprising when George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. It was very hard for me to speak that truth in that moment. Not that I already was not, and there were other people, but it was that moment that I think people were forced to listen, and they had no choice but to hear it. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, we all had to take a moment and say, oh my gosh, it's time, it's here, it's now. And let's do it. And I was very surprised to see how many people were up for the conversation.
It's interesting. I think to myself, when this all happened and we finally started to have the conversation, the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, we wasted so much good time. Like we wasted so much time by not having the conversation. And the time that the conversation started was a moment in time where everybody was forced to pause.
Right.
And I think that's what gave it its moment. And I think that there's no accidents in life on timing and when things become a conversation. But it is a conversation that needs to be had. It needed to be had. It needs to be had. It needs to continue. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's the most important takeaway, is that it's not a one and done. It's something that continuously has to be ingrained in our day to day.
Absolutely, Nick. When I initially had Texture versus Race, it was on the cusp of someone saying, hey, I want you to teach your niche, which is color, right? Mm-hmm. And they said, we want you to teach who we consider the top 1% of the industry, these colorists. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be the best of the best, but we want you to teach them how to do black hair. And that conversation just really sparked the thought, okay, if you're a top 1% and you're the specialist, like you're the top, why don't you know how to do texture?
Right.
And can we ask, is it really about the hair or is it about the person in the chair? Mm-hmm. And until we have that conversation, everything else is a moot point. Mm-hmm. The reality is that the conversation, like you said, we've wasted so much time. It wasn't that the conversation wasn't being had. It's just that it was not being heard or taken seriously because there was no requirement for it to be taken seriously. There was no requirement for change to happen. And it's like the Pandora's box has been opened and change is upon us now. Mm-hmm. It's happening, and you either are going to get right or get left.
I love that.
True.
So to continue the conversation, because we know, to your point and both of your points, change doesn't happen overnight. This is a conversation and a movement that needs to continue to happen. So for salon professionals that are really coming to a place of being able to be comfortable with the conversation and knowing how to ask the right questions, but maybe having some hesitancy around, what if I don't even know how to pose the right question? There's so much importance on making sure that we have a shared reality and that communication is taking place. Do you have any insight on how to get that conversation continuing in a place where we truly are as an industry, not being left behind, and that we are truly being a more diverse and inclusive place for all of our guests?
Absolutely. So one of the things Texture versus Race does, and I'm really, really proud of, is that we've moved the conversation from a classroom to online in groups where people felt comfortable with bringing their concerns and bringing their realities. It's hard to say we have a shared reality. We just have a shared space, but we all have different realities. I just want to share that. Like, we're not going to have a shared reality. We're going to have a shared space. But what we can do is create the space that's conducive to us feeling vulnerable and feeling that we can be our authentic selves without judgment, without shame, but with a resolution in mind, with that type of spirit going forward. So Texture versus Race creates opportunities for us to have the conversation. Some of it is behind closed doors. Some of it is live, but we actually do that by way of summits. Okay. We have the Texture versus Race Summit, and we bring people to the table and we close the doors and say, let's talk about it. Tell us about your biases. Bring your pain points to the table. And can we talk about it? Can we get to a resolve? Can we listen to each other without listening to respond? Can we open our minds to change our hearts and then move our hands? And that is our theme. Everything starts with the mind. Then we create a conviction in your heart. And then we teach you how to move your hands, which is the elevation of just the moral development of the industry itself and creating a more inclusive curriculum, even from the beginning at the school level.
Yeah. And that's where it needs to begin, at the school level.
Absolutely.
There's one thing that I always think about is I think less people are afraid to have the conversation today, but more people are afraid to do it wrong.
I love that you said that. And this is what Texture versus Race, Keya. Keya. This is my thought. This is Keya. Aside from, Texture versus Race, the brand, Keya understands that people do not change. They choose. We're only asking that you listen to something else and let maybe someone else's reality wrestle with your bias for space in your mind. That's all we're asking. And people that are afraid to have the conversation are usually afraid to do it wrong. Not because they don't have the right intentions, but they're afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of cancel culture. Right. So we create what we call counsel culture. And we want people to fail forward. We want you to be able to make the mistakes because you're going to.
Right.
That's
you're
part of the
going
learning
to. Process.
It's the process of anything that you do, right? You make the mistake, you acknowledge the mistake, you understand how that mistake happened and try to rectify that one way or the other, and you move forward. You apologize and say, hey, my bad, I'm sorry. I understand now where I went wrong. And moving forward, I'm going to do better. That's all you can do is you create a muscle memory of choosing differently at every point. You don't just change.
I love that. So incredibly insightful and so many like truly truth nuggets of how we can share the space, right? Sharing the space. That's incredible. If you were to think through the next 5 years and if you were to have a dream for Texture versus Race in this industry, what would that be?
All right. So the next 5 years are probably already played out in my mind already. However, I'm a woman of faith and I believe in God and I believe that I have purpose on my life. And I feel like just as I could not say exactly where I would be today, I could not have said that I would be here. I can't say exactly where I'll be in 5 years. However, I do feel like Texture versus Race will start being a huge resource for racial therapy. I believe Texture versus Race will be a space where people come to gather and to do a town hall. That's what I see. I want us to create a space where we decide what the structure of the industry will be going forward. I would love to see everyone who has buy-in in any corner of the industry, whether that's the schools, the directors, the teachers, the stylists, the salon owners, the brands, the marketers, the R&D, the media, the repost apps, you name it. If we all could come together and on a regular basis have the conversation, the true drawers down conversation, and we create what we want to see as an inclusive industry, and not only claiming inclusive, but do it until we don't have to say it anymore.
Right.
Until it doesn't have to be a thing. It just is what it is. That would be what I want texture versus race to be.
I like it. I like the way that sounds.
Me too.
It takes work, right?
It takes work, but it takes work on everybody's part.
Everyone.
So we are encouraging the beauty industry to take ownership and accountability for their part.
Yeah.
And that's every person. What did you do? What did you do to allow it to be this way this long? And what can you do to help rebuild into a new space?
Yeah. You know, pivoting to hair, you know, I think of, you know, part of my job at Ulta Beauty is that I get to lead the salon business at Ulta Beauty. And one of the things that we're working on every single day, and I'll admit we're not there yet, is that no matter who walks through the door, they feel seen. And they know confidently that the hairstylist at that station is going to be able to deliver whatever experience they want in our salons. And we're getting better at it. You know, 5-6 years ago, you probably didn't see yourself in a lot of the salons, right? Because our stylists either weren't trained or we didn't have the texture experts in our stores. That's evolving and that's changing. And I'm really proud of the work that we're doing there. We need to continue to do that. And as you know, that doesn't happen overnight because it comes from building technical skills with your hand. Not only making sure you understand the different fabric, but making sure you understand how to really start and work your way through it and make sure that you get a great end result and hold it with credibility, right?
Right.
And that takes time to build. That being said, there's a lot of consumers that come into our store every day too, and they have natural curl patterns, but they don't embrace it. How do we, as a company that sees 40 million consumers come into our doors, how do we be that advocate for all texture and make sure that we're moving that message to it's okay to embrace your texture? And let us show you how.
Nick, that's a two-part question for me because I have a comment about what you said. So I want to put a pin in that question.
Okay.
Okay, if you allow me to go back. I want you to set yourself up for success. The expectation of every stylist to know how to address every client coming in the door to a certain level, to the highest level that they can, is not unrealistic, but it does feel a little, I don't want to say far-fetched. Let me reframe. I want to reframe that for you. I want to give you a little reframe. If everyone changed their heart about how they see people when they walk in the door, and they were charged to learn or to at least accept the knowledge that they already know and apply it to everyone. You already know what you need to know about every texture that walks in the door. But because you have not been prompted, encouraged, or required to use that same information on every texture, you feel like there's some type of exceptionalism there. Like they are different somehow and that they need to learn something different. They don't need to learn anything different. They need to learn how to see people different. The hair will fall in line, right? Is there rules of engagement? Yes, the rules of engagement are different. But if you understand that hair is a fabric and not a race, and you use your professional prowess and your professional qualifiers, you will be able to see that fabric sitting in your hair as not something to be feared. Or something to be learned so far away, like I need all this extra education. It will become easier for you to be confident. And to be honest, when people come into the door, and I've often said that the beauty salon and the churches are the most segregated institutions left. When people come into your salon and you say, I don't know how to do your texture, that is the faux pas. That is where we go wrong, right? But if you walked in the door and said, I don't know how to do your hair, it now takes and shifts the accountability from the client feeling like something's wrong with her texture to it's now something's wrong with my skill level and I've got work to do. But if you are at least to a average standard of inclusiveness, then you can still operate in your niche. I don't know what your niche is, but mine might be color, right?
Right.
Not might be. It is color because I'm a color expert. I'm a color specialist. So when someone comes in my chair and they say, I want X, Y, and Z, if they want something outside of the realm of a really great color job, I might say, you know what? I could give you a great shampoo. I can, blow dry this hair. I could do this and that. But if you want X, Y, and Z, that's not my niche. That's not my specialty. So I can do this if you'll allow me with my, in my full confident self. But I can also tell that person, give them a referral and send them out. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. And I think that's where sometimes people get it wrong, because what they think is I've got to learn how to be the silk out queen, or I've got to learn how to do every wash and go and every, finger coil and you don't. But at least be knowledgeable enough to take ownership for what you do know.
But can I say something to that? Don't you think that is their obligation, though?
No.
Because reason why I ask it is because in school, you're taught all the different types of hair, the different types of face shapes, the different types of ways that we lift and deposit with color, how perms or relaxers work in the hair. So if we were taught all of that, why should any hair type be any different? Why shouldn't that be the baseline?
And that's my point. If you know all of that and you learned lift and deposit, you learned hair cutting, if the curriculum was truly inclusive from the beginning,
but that's the problem.
That's my whole point.
Yes.
This is the elevation I'm talking about. This is what I'm saying. The concept doesn't change. The information doesn't change. The avatar to which you applied it to does.
Right.
So if all I learned was straight and wavy hair, usually a Caucasian woman or a woman with straight or wavy hair, no chemicals, and a level 5 to 7 level hair, right? Then everything I learn is based upon that average client, that avatar. But that's because the information I'm learning is not inclusive. It's not that I'm still not applying these same color principles. The color theory doesn't change.
Right. No, it doesn't.
The cutting angles don't change.
Color doesn't lift color on any texture.
So
okay, well, you need to say that again. So that's what I'm saying. It's a bias that lives there that makes you think that what you know does not apply to another texture of hair. And that is what I'm saying. It's a personal work that needs to be done. Teaching people just saying, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do texture is not enough, because it won't make it stick. You've got to change their heart. You've got to open their minds. You got to change their heart, and then we can move your hands. And that's what we're saying. Teaching you just a technique won't work if you still have a bias to the person that's sitting in the chair. Yeah. So it goes back to the schools. It goes back to saying, I have a niche. I cut hair, but can I cut hair on every texture? That's where you become the expert in your subject matter. Not that you have to be the silk out person or know how to do a 2-strand twist. No, but if you say I'm a cutter, then cut everything.
Right.
You should be able to cut a camel.
Right. Exactly.
Period.
I totally agree. It's so funny. I'm listening to you talk, which I have a feeling we could talk for hours. I wish we had a cocktail run. But no.
Oh gosh.
No, all kidding aside, like there are a million different lessons in what you just said. And I think that's the moral of the story of what I'm taking away here, is that it's not just one thing.
It's not.
We have to break it down, and we have to hit one at a time and have an open mind and an open heart and understand on how to do that and be vulnerable.
And it's a personal work.
It is.
And if every person, like I said at the top, if every person made it their personal mission to change themselves personally, then we would have a huge reflection outward of a global effort.
Right.
That's
Positive
where we
movement.
make impact.
Right.
That's when we change things. That's when we change the world. This is, your question was, how do we get consumers to embrace their hair? What if I said they could if you would?
Right. Do you know, after we just had this conversation, I knew that would be your answer.
It had to
and
be.
it makes total sense.
True.
It really does.
I looked at this question last night, right? And I said, Eugene and I were talking, my good assistant, I love my Eugene. And we were talking, and I said, I think the narrative that curlies don't love their hair has always been the frame of struggle and behind the guise of judgment and bastardization. But as we watch our curly girls come out and say, I am embracing my curls, it's not because they've been encouraged to. It's because they found some type of inner release
Yeah.
that says, I can love my hair regardless of what anybody says and what they think. The reason why we haven't loved our hair isn't something because we just somehow are insecure people. It's because we were told that our hair was for decades and decades. So is it really our job to just learn to love our hair, or is it your job to allow us to love our hair?
Yeah.
And when I say your, I mean the people that are responsible for the marketing, for the products, for the brands, for the visualizations, for the product marketing to people and not for performance. Check that.
Yeah.
If we stop marketing to people, then we would actually dispose of the fact that, there's a white product and a black product. We say that a lot. And we get a lot of brands that are not black owned that will put a lot of black faces to it to sell product, but is it really just for black people or just for white people?
Just
Why
for
can't we
people.
just have product
For
that
people.
work? Because everybody wants volume. Some people want it to be smooth. Some people want it to be frizzy. Some people want it to be curly and clumpy. Some people want it to be whatever it is.
Wow.
Product is for performance, not people.
I agree. I happen to know a guy who came out with a line based on that.
Who is it? So I can follow him. Or am I sitting in close proximity?
You're sitting in close proximity. I made you try that product this morning.
I did, and I love the oil. I'm not going to lie. I plucked my curls out this morning, and I was like, okay, Nick.
No. All kidding aside, though, I totally agree with you. Performance. Just make things that perform.
That's it.
And then people will resonate with it. Or they won't.
Yeah. Stop having an urban aisle, an ethnic aisle. Why do you have an ethnic aisle?
Right.
Why not just have an aisle for the people that want it one way and some people that want it this way, some people don't want that? It doesn't have to be the black aisle.
Right.
Sounds
crazy, too. When you think about
it sounds crazy saying it, but that's the reality. And so I do think that the burden of obligation lies in America. It lies in the brands. It lies in the distribution houses. It lies with Ulta Beauty to say, you can find whatever it is you're looking for. And you are beautiful however it is that you decide. Whether I wear my hair straight, curly, wavy, braided, whatever it is, I'm beautiful regardless. And everywhere I go, I should be allowed to feel my own beauty.
It's so true. We have a saying at Ulta Beauty where we say, you don't come here to get beautiful. You already are.
Come on, Ulta Beauty. I love that.
It's true. It's true.
Absolutely.
It's a place to discover, explore.
So for anyone looking to find more information on how they can continue the conversation with texture versus race, what are some resources? Where can they find you? What are some ways to get involved?
Absolutely. So everyone can follow me at Keya Artistically. Keya Artistically. Texture versus race, spelled exactly the way we said it. Texture vs race. And you can go on our website, textureversusrace.com. We're on TikTok a little. we might be more later, but stick with us. And we're definitely on Facebook. We have a group. There's a lot of great information in those groups. If you go back in that group to look at all of the posts and the conversations, you see buy-in from a lot of people who had a lot to say. And you can get a lot of good information, a lot of questions answered, and see yourself everywhere in those comments and groups. So I still love my group. And then, of course, you can always come to the Texture versus Races Summit. We do it once a year. We're expanding to do an educators edition, as well as more about color and a town hall that we talked about. We want to see you there. If you want to be involved, get on our email list.
Okay.
Express that you want to be involved. Brands sponsor, they connect with us. We'd love to partner with Ulta Beauty. I'm always about putting people on the spot. So I feel like there has to be a partnership there. So
we have some talking to do.
we got some talk. Cut.
Well, listen, all kidding aside, thank you for being here. Thank you for really creating a platform, a safe place for people to really grow, because it's really important. And as you can tell by today, this is just just a
Drop in the
little
bucket.
bit of a drop in the bucket of a big conversation that we need to continue to have every day. And it starts with conversations like
It
this.
starts with conversations like this. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
course.
Keya. Oh
both
my
for
goodness,
having
thank you.
me. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you. You're
And I
incredible.
appreciate that.
Of course. We'll see you again for sure. We have to pick back up on this conversation.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all for watching Unveiling Beauty. Be sure to visit an Ulta Beauty near you. And remember, no matter your hair type, embrace it because you are already beautiful. Till next time, stay well, feel beautiful, and be you.